Hello, everybody. How are you all? Today, we are going to start a new lesson, A Visit to Cambridge. This is a story of a meeting between two extraordinary people. Both of them are differently able. You may not be able to understand what is differently abled. Actually, this is something who are physically disabled. We have given them a name as differently abled because in this world, whoever has been born, they are born with extraordinary potentials. They cannot be underestimated. So, you must be knowing about Stephen Hawking, the greatest scientist, and Firdaus Kanga, a writer and a journalist. In this lesson, you are going to get a conversation between these two people. How they have achieved to such level, how they survived, that you will get to know from this lesson. You must be knowing about the theory of survival of the fittest. Here in this world, whoever is fit can only survive. So, fit, how do you define fitness? Do you think a person who is physically fit, that person is only fit? No. A person who is mentally fit is physically fit. So, in this chapter, you are going to come across an astrophysicist who was born with a paralyzed body, but he was the most brilliant and completely paralyzed astrophysicist, Stephen Hawking. Seeing the picture, you must have understood very well about whom we are talking about. He was confined to a wheelchair and was not even able to speak. So he used to speak by punching buttons on a computer. And are you seeing the picture of Firdaus Kanga? He is a writer and a journalist from Mumbai. So, this is a little bit detail which I have tried to find out about brittle bones, of which this Firdaus Kanga character is facing. So, you may go through this by giving a pause and try to know what is the reason of this, that his bones were brittle. In this lesson, we come to know that Firdaus Kanga, who lives in Mumbai, wanted to meet Stephen Hawking to know how he lives his life. Because maybe to some extent Firdaus Kanga was not satisfied with his life because he was physically disabled. So, when he came across Stephen Hawking, he came to know that how a person should live and how he should address himself. From him, he got the knowledge that he was a differently abled person. So let's begin the chapter. The author, Firdaus Kanga, begins by telling the readers that at some point in life, England only meant Cambridge for him and nothing more. So, metaphor over here is a thing regarded as a symbolic of something else. England always meant for Cambridge University, that in England a person only goes to study. But Firdaus Kanga is telling that he further remarked that after his meeting with Stephen Hawking, the meaning of England changed, completely changed his life. Do you get that? So, then in the next paragraph, the author mentions that he happened to be walking He happened to be on a walking tour through Cambridge when his guide spoke about Stephen Hawking. The guide called him a poor man because he was differently abled. He even told the author that Stephen Hawking now holds the position in the university which was earlier held by Isaac Newton. So, do you understand that? That now this person, this astrophysicist who was also physically disabled, holds the position of Isaac Newton. The author reveals that before the guide had mentioned, he had forgotten Stephen Hawking, most brilliant, completely paralyzed astrophysicist, the author of one of the biggest bestseller ever, A Brief History of Time, lived here. In the next paragraph, he says that once the walking tour came to an end, the author hurried to the nearest phone booth and stretched the cord to the extent of almost tearing it so that it could reach him because he was not of that big height. So, because he was wheelchair bound, when he called Stephen Hawking's residence, where his assistant answered the call, the author introduced himself as someone who came all the way from India, which the assistant must have taken in a literal sense, that he travelled all the way from India on a wheelchair. To write about his travelling experience in Britain, the author explained that he needed to see Professor Hawking, even if it meant only for 10 minutes. But the assistant gave him 30-minute slot from 3:30 to 4 for the next day. The author began feeling weak at that moment. He relates how one is constantly told to be brave and cheerful when you grow up being differently abled, as if it were that easy. So, do you get that? So, he was physically disabled, so he was feeling a little bit of inferiority complex to meet such a brave personality. He was thinking that meeting such person will be a different kind of experience, and maybe either he may be motivated or he may be demotivated. So he was feeling a little bit nervous. He mentions that people think that one who is different means one who is physically disabled is lazy to draw a check on their courage account. In such a situation, the only thing that gives you courage and strength is seeing people like you do the same something big. So, he was going to meet a person who was same like him, but that person was doing something big. So this Firdaus Kanga also wanted to do something big. So he had gone to Cambridge to gather inspiration from him. So it is only then you know that there is hope and possibility which makes you go beyond your limits and imagination. So this was his thinking, that he wanted to meet this person and change his thought process. The next afternoon, when he went to see him, Stephen Hawking told him that he had not been brave. He spoke in his disembodied computer voice that he had no other option. The author wanted to reply that living so creatively, even if with disabilities, was a brave choice, but he refrained from doing so, as his guilt took over every time He pushed Stephen Hawking to respond by talking to him. He spoke by finding the words on his computer and then tapping a little switch in his hand, with the only remaining movement left in his pale and long fingers. He would easily get tired, fatigued, and would shut his eyes every now and then in frustration, all because he wasn't able to speak. He had to tap it and express his views through the computer voice. So he used to feel tired. He would shut his eyes every now and then in frustration. The author mentions that he could feel the pain of Hawkins at the thought in his intensely active and vibrant mind that came out emotionless and stiff as a corpse. Stiff as a corpse means stiff as a dead body. The author expresses how most people think that people with different abilities are constantly sad and miserable. But as far as he is talking about himself, it is not true. He asks Hawkins if it was true for him, or was he laughing on the same inside. He took Hawkins almost 3 minutes to respond. He finds it entertaining when people are only kind to him because of his different abilities. The author further asks him if he feels irritated when people like him come and keep him away from his work, to which he answered a firm yes. After that, Stephen smiled in a one-way smile. The author expresses how most people think that people with different abilities are constantly sad, but he was not so. So, he thinks that after living such a life, he is the most wonderful and beautiful creature in this world. So, this gave Firdaus Ganga a strength and courage that if such person can live his life so nicely, then what is wrong with him? He is also the same. No need to regret for anything. So with this, I close the chapter. The next part you will get in the next module. Thanks to all of you.